How's it going, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the James Loud Podcast. And today, our special guests are Artur, and we have Lars, Beyond Bootcamp. And these guys are from Brazil. They're doing some amazing things. Actually, you're not originally from Brazil, but you are in Brazil now.
Right.
So thank you guys for coming on the show. I'm glad to have you here.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here as well.
Absolutely. So I first wanted to start talking about how we developed this concept for a boot camp, right? Do you guys remember how we met?
Yeah, I remember. That was a dream that started a long time ago, to be honest.
Yeah.
We've met first time last year in Cannabis when I bought your book. You signed my book. We talked a little bit, but you were busy, so we didn't have much time. And we met again this year at Cannabis, and we met again at Mary Jane.
Yeah.
But in Mary Jane, we didn't have much time to talk. But luckily, just 10 minutes before I get on my flight, I met you at the airport. And I was like, should I take the flight? Should I stop to talk? And I was like debating in my head. I was like, well, I might not have another chance.
Yeah.
But just stop by, say hello, present myself again, have a explanation for you, like how my dream of doing this in Brazil was shaking my head. And I explained to you, and you were like, straight away, yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
And straight away, you gave so much ideas in such a short time. In a short period of time, we start talking, having conversations through the WhatsApp and through emails. And we started developing BCB, and BCB is becoming something that I think going to shake the world of cannabis.
Yeah, I think the potential for it's huge. I've done boot camps before, and so I see the flaws that people have made trying to do boot camps successfully, and I've also seen them done successfully. Just together, I knew right away we needed to do a boot camp together.
Yeah,
like it was one of those things, and then Lars comes into the picture.
Well, yeah, so, the second that Artur landed in São Paulo, I get this call that's just electrified. Yeah. And he's like, we have to make this happen. We have to make this happen.
So we have this dream team with Cynthia Salarizada. And I feel like the potential is so huge now. You know, she brings a lot to the table, you know, and I have exposure with some of the stuff I do. I have some contacts. You guys are on the ground over there. And we really have this dream team of people that are able to hit it from so many different angles that I think we have the chance of being really successful. Right? Successful on the education level, successful on the media side, successful on so many different levels. And then Brazil is this place where there's so much potential.
Yes, definitely. When I thought about this project, I thought so much smaller, to be honest. You know, I didn't dream that big. But when you came to the table, you're like, yeah, but we're going to do something much better than you're dreaming. You know, I was just thinking about, well, let's do the James Loud masterclass in Brazil. Yeah. And you change everything. You shake the table and say like, no, let's do a boot camp. Let's bring more people to the table, people that can add more energy, more beef, and more knowledge.
Well, and the beauty of what we're doing and what we're going to be doing in the future is we're basically working along with an event that's already existing. Like next year in Mary Jane, we're going to do the boot camp before Mary Jane. And I feel like we're not trying to reinvent the wheel. We're doing stuff that's been successful on other platforms, stuff that's successful, you know, in other fields too. Like, so, but what we're able to do is take the best of the best, and we're going to lecture. You know, each person lectures for say an hour, except for Nick T. Shout out Nick T, because he's going to be doing a lot of hands-on demonstration, hands-on work, and I think that makes it really special. So we have guys doing like Biff. We have him doing a section where he's going to be talking about cultivation and scaling cultivation. We've got Aryan Roskam with all his years of knowledge talking about working in Thailand and how he's worked in the Congo and how these situations from place to place change. And then we've got Dragonfly Earth Medicine. So that's going to be interesting with them and what they bring to the table. I feel like it's pretty complete. And then Ray Bama is the marketing genius behind Runts, Fire Society. And so along with the Brazilians, we're going to have a lot to talk about and a lot to do.
Oh, without a doubt. And I think really what's really exciting more than anything is that what's been missing in Brazil is a concentration of knowledge that we're going to be accumulating in this event, and it's all going to be translated live. And so you don't have this barrier between languages. You don't have that gap, which really is an impediment to the growth of this market. And there's so much going on, and there's so much need for this insight and this knowledge to take the lessons of these other markets that have developed, whether it be through failure or through success, and bring that to this really exciting, what we're calling maybe the most dynamic, untapped market in cannabis today, which is Brazil.
And I think it's so amazing. And I don't think I could have pulled this off years ago. I wouldn't have the knowledge that I have now with my breeding book, with the stuff I've done with Oaksterdam, with the knowledge I've done with other boot camps, and then the team of people that we've kind of put together and the speakers, right? So it's just this thing, this fine-tuned machine that I feel like it'll get better as we do them. But the potential for this is so huge, right? I mean, education is so important, and Brazil being an emerging market like it is, it's like the perfect storm in some ways, because we have this huge country coming online with people that are passionate, and so that right there, passionate people, you take cannabis and passionate people, and if you have an abundance of passionate people, you're going to have success.
Sure, I agree. And I think the biggest challenge for Brazilians is the language. I know like Brazilians are not very familiarized with English, speaking English. So that's a great opportunity. We have met so many cannabis associations in Brazil, and they are lacking a little bit of knowledge to do that change from like, what you used to say is growing cannabis is kind of easy, but growing high quality cannabis, top shelf cannabis is not that easy. So you need to take concepts and understand a lot of variables.
Right.
And I think that's the biggest opportunity Brazil is having now, to have a real face-to-face contact with people that are leading the marketing around the world, and being able to absorb that knowledge. Maybe someone from different associations can have a chance to have a quick talk with you and just grab some tips. We did a podcast in Brazil for a while, and I know like a lot of people used to tell me, you do a 2 hours podcast, but it's a 15-minute thing that changed everything in my product, what I harvest, how I grow. So I think that's the amazing opportunity for Brazilians to be able to get first contact with people that are really changing cannabis industry.
Absolutely. I feel like having that many industry leaders in one place, you're going to get bits of magic. You might not need the whole hour of whoever's speaking, right? But there can be these pieces of magic, right? Where it's like, oh, for breeding, that's how I scale breedings. Okay, so I can do this. I use multiple donors. Oh, wow. It's like these little things, right? Or whether it's with nicotine, there's little tips and tricks that'll save you time, save you money, and show you how to scale a lot faster than you would have to do on your own. Because if you're doing it on your own, you're reading a book or you're doing this stuff, it creates a path for you. But a lot of times you follow that path and then you have to take a step back because you messed up or you did whatever. But if you can get a leg up by somebody showing you, okay, these are the mistakes I've made over the years, and these are the things that I did to be successful, and these are the steps you can do to be successful, I feel like there's huge value in that, right? Especially in a country that's trying to emerge in a world market with the potential for export. Brazil is the perfect place.
Well, and I think that's a perfect segue just for any listener that's not familiar with the country, just to give a bit of an overview.
Yeah.
Brazil is a little smaller than the continental United States. Mm-hmm. It's got 220 plus million people. It's, for me, very similar in some ways to the US in the sense that it's so big, why learn another language? So oftentimes it becomes a little separate from, especially when you put it in the context, Brazilians don't think of themselves really as Latino. They're Brazilian. Right. They're a separate entity. They're a separate continent almost. So
they don't speak Spanish, they speak Portuguese, right? So that's just one of the components.
Right. And then you have this really vibrant youth population. The average age in Brazil is 35, or the median age, and 86% of the population is connected on the internet and very active.
Yeah.
So the internet and the exchange of information that's happening right now in this cannabis segment is overwhelming, but still that language barrier is that key impediment that we're really trying to tackle with this event.
Well, it's funny because Spain and Portugal are right next to each other, but Spanish and Portuguese are very different in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Especially if you're talking about Brazilian Portuguese.
Yeah.
We consider ourselves totally different from Portugal. Our language is different. Our communication is different. We seems to be a little more flexible. We understand, we communicate, we are more open. And I'm 100% sure everyone that attend to BCB will feel it's what we want to offer. It's like that Brazilian hug, We want to offer not only the knowledge, but the experience to be welcome to Brazil, that Brazilian warm. We like to be close to people. We like to talk. We are not afraid to speak. And
you guys like socializing. You like good food. You like So the thing I know about Brazilians is they love the experience. My friends that are Brazilian all are about that experience, right? With life. And I feel like for me, that's like the biggest thing is I want to live these experiences, right? Because, you can buy things and things go away, but the experiences, they last a lifetime.
Yes.
Absolutely. And it's all relationship.
Yeah.
I mean, it's relational. If you go and you meet someone, they want you to meet their family. They want you to have dinner with them. They,
Right.
and even if it's a business transaction or something like that, they want to sit down and have lunch. They want to have a couple beers. You talk for a couple hours about everything under the sun, your family, their family, and then the last 15 minutes, then you can start to talk about business. But there's no rush to that.
Yeah.
So it's a very different climate in that sense, but really that's part of the DNA of this event. And we're going to have a Brazilian style barbecue at the end. And it's not because we're going to party. Well, we might a little bit, but it's about having a moment where we can talk with everyone there. And it's not this barrier of VIPs or this or that. It's everyone's there commingling, enjoying each other and this communal moment.
I love that. I love that. So let's talk about you for a minute because you're not from Brazil originally, but you love Brazil and you spent a lot of time there.
Right. 20 years ago, I got lucky and participated in an exchange program and landed in Artur's house.
Wow.
And we became like brothers, and it became my second family today. My children call his mother grandma. And really, I was only supposed to stay there for 6 months, but I ended up staying a year, which outside of the program. And the rest was history. Traveling back and forth, I studied back in the United States, brushed up on my Portuguese that was pretty informal after living in Brazil, just learning on the street more or less. And then tried to really do what I could in terms of interact with the two markets. I worked with exports of craft beer out of Oregon. I'm originally from Oregon. So we were doing craft beer and craft spirits out of Oregon for a while, with one of the main markets being to Brazil. But always looking for different angles. And then finally, I figured out a way to move down there and stay for good. And we're doing some really fun stuff, really cool stuff in the cannabis segment between the different entities that Artur and I have put together. And it's a really exciting time. And we want everyone to come down and check it out.
Nice. Really cool. So what's your favorite part about Brazil?
I think it's the relational component, honestly. I live in a busy section of Rio, and my kids know 75 to 100 people that live in the surrounding couple blocks. Everyone knows each other's name. For a big city, that's bizarre to me.
Yeah. Very different than the US.
Very. And it's I don't know, it's one of those cultures where, especially having children, you expect, at least as an American, that sometimes they're not going to be wanted, but they always are. I don't know how many times I've gone into a restaurant and a waiter goes, "If your kid doesn't make a mess, then there's something wrong with them."
Wow.
So it's a very different approach. But I mean, that's just the tip of the iceberg. Amazing music, amazing culture, art, everything. It's an amazing melting pot that I would, in certain ways, draw a lot of similarities to the United States, but it's more mixed, I would say. And everyone is just mixed together, and you have these amazing spaces like the beach in particular, which is highly celebrated in Brazil. Something like 90% of people in Brazil live within an hour drive of the beach.
Wow.
And every Sunday, almost everyone is going out there, and they're spending the whole day bringing the cooler, bringing the family. And you could have the mayor sitting next to a guy that is homeless.
Yeah.
And there's no separation. And they might start talking. They might shoot the shit. They might have a beer together.
Wow.
And that's special.
So the communities there are very inclusive and there's less exclusivity.
I would say so. I mean, it's hard to paint a general broad brushstroke, what have you, but there are these spaces in society that are much more, connected, I would say.
Yeah. Well, there's poverty there too, but people are happy. I mean, I don't know. I've never been there, but so I've heard. You know, there's large areas of poverty, but people get by with a lot less and are still happy. How's the homeless situation?
Well, I think, yeah, it has a lot of poverty in Brazil, I won't lie. But I think cannabis has a lot of opportunities to change a little bit of that. We have been able to visit it with Grove Bags. Grove Bags is one of our partners in Brazil, and we have been able to visit some associations with them. And we saw how simple and how much those people are being able to grow and get more knowledge and be able to work and earn money from cannabis in Brazil. And I think poverty is a thing, of course, everywhere in the world. I just have been here in San Francisco for the first time. We've seen some poverty here as well.
There's a lot of poverty.
Not as much as Brazil, of course, 100%. I won't lie. You can't compare. Brazil is totally different on this point. But I think it's kind of like Lars said. Everybody is, even though there is poverty, people are welcome. They are always smiling. You know, you see a lot of good energy, positivity there. People
There's still a lot of respect.
Respect, yes, 100%. If you go to Brazil, as long as you're like not with like a lot of gold chains and everything, you can definitely go everywhere you want, and you're gonna be welcome. Lars have had such a good experience 20 years ago.
Yeah,
he have been with some friends that have been living like for quite a long time in the poverty areas, but he was so welcome. You know, I think he had made a lot more friends than I do, you know, in these areas so far. And I don't think he has no bad experience at all.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's necessary to speak much more on the poverty component of it, but I think if you wanted to do a general broad stroke, Brazilians are they're willing to take on any problem.
Yeah.
So it's not a culture that gets overwhelmed with a situation.
Yeah,
they'll make the best out of it. If you have, you know, some type of an issue, you also have several people to call on that are more than willing to drop what they're doing and come help you figure it out.
Nice.
And that's, you know, I think that collective approach to things, as well as this ingenuity, so to speak, is something that you start to see in all these elements of life. But, you know, circling back to cannabis, you also see it's a go-getter mentality.
Yeah.
We'll make it happen. If we don't know, we're just going to do it and we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
And so I think that shows you a little bit of the basis of how quickly the market's developing and why. But then also, again, it really underlines the importance of bringing more resources, these educational resources, these types of events where we can have this knowledge transfer, so that things are done in the right way, or are moving in the right directions and aren't moving in the direction of repeating errors that happen in other markets.
Well, and one thing I think we're doing right with the bootcamp is the narrative of where culture meets education. Because I feel like there's plenty of culture out there. There's plenty of education out there. You can go online, you can read a lot about stuff. But what we want to do is we want to bring the culture and the education together to the people, so we can take the years of knowledge that we have from a traditional standpoint and impart that into the people in Brazil, or at least share our stories and our lessons that we've learned.
Absolutely. And I think we're doing a good job as well to include the traditional market in Brazil. Because although if you look on a general view of cannabis, you'd see that for the last several decades, the 95% or more only have access to brown brickweed. And only in the last couple of years, we're seeing this massive leapfrog from brick to premium flower, which is exciting in itself, because it's not this crawl between all these different stages.
Right.
But also, you can't forget about the legacy growers in Bahia that in different eras, depending on the situation, were known for producing really high quality flower. And there's also some Brazilian land races that should be on the same list, or should be thought of and sought after the same way as others.
I'm super excited about the land race, especially seeing traditional, land race from Brazil, stuff that I've never seen. I'm always looking for stuff I've never seen before. It's always intriguing to me how a plant is affected differently in different terroirs, in different regions with different soil, different climate conditions, temperature. All these things play a huge role into making the plant express certain ways. And so I get excited about going to new areas and seeing different things.
Absolutely.
So I think I'll learn as much as I impart down there. So
that's the goal.
Yeah, that's the goal. For sure.
And I think it's always good to remember with how big the country is, there's the promise of future of what the possibilities are with all these different climate zones, with all these from subtropical to even have some places that get quite cold.
Yeah.
So I think it's a really exciting time and a really exciting market.
Yeah, good stuff. Well, we have a special guest that's going to be speaking at the event with us. So if you'd like to come join us.
Yeah, I'm going to bow out and let both the Brazilians take the spotlight.
Yo, that's my home and my good friend, Ruben Coelho.
Excuse me, sir.
So we have Ruben. How do you pronounce your last name?
So Coelho means rabbit in English.
Nice.
Coelho, yeah. Everybody in here says coelho or something like that. So when I get to a hotel, for example.
Conejo.
Yeah, conejo in Spanish, for sure.
Spanish,
Yeah.
Interesting.
Thank you for having us, sir.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, no, this is really exciting times for all of us, right? So exciting times for me, for Cynthia, who's helping out, Lars and Artur. It's like, I think the potential is so big for what we're doing. And I get excited about building, whether it's building a brand, building a business, building a new product SKU, but doing something like a boot camp that has impact or the potential for impact, right? So like, I think more than anything I'm 48. I'm not super old. I'm not super young, right? I'm in that middle age. I consider myself middle-aged still, even though I'm getting older. But like the stuff I want to spend my time doing, I want to impart stuff that has impact on future generations, on communities that need help, on people that are passionate. The big thing, one thing I know without a doubt is that Brazilians are passionate, right? So if I can go and be a part of something that's so much bigger than myself, that makes me happy. I get excited about planning those kind of events. We've got High Times and we've got Oaksterdam. So we have some big names behind us, as long as guest speakers like yourself with a lot of background. So why don't we start off with telling everybody about your background?
Of course, sir. Thank you for the opportunity and bringing us in. So I'm Brazilian, but have been living in Canada for the last 7 to 8 years now.
Yeah.
I used, my background was basically inside universities in Brazil. I did all my master's, my doctors. I did half of my doctors here in the U.S. I spent a couple of years at the Smithsonian Institution in Washington, D.C., and then went back to Brazil for a postdoc. And back in the day, it was we were struggling a lot to be subsidized to do science. And then my wife and myself, we decided to move. And then we moved to Canada with our 11-month-old daughter and our pug. So it was like a big thing. It was like Norman Bates, our pug, and our daughter, all the suitcases, myself and my wife, airplane, Okanagan. So we're in Kelowna now. And when we got there, I was wondering, and I was a little bit scared of what I could do, because what I've done back in Brazil was very specific.
Yeah. I
used to do systematics, phylogenetics. So that kind of a science that is used abroad, but it's not something that brings immediate value to businesses, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when we got there, I didn't know what to do. And then I remembered that cannabis was just being legalized,
right?
Like federally and recreationally. And I was like, wow, cannabis is a plant.
Yeah.
So I typed Cannabis Kelowna and the name of this company appeared, and I started in there a week later as a trimmer.
Mm-hmm.
And after a few weeks and people kind of found out about my background in Brazil as a biodiversity researcher, a botanist, the founder of the company brought me in and said like, hey, do you want to know more? Do you want to expand? And I remember that I started looking at the plant and trying to learn the best I could during trimming, because for us Brazilians, cannabis was and still is a little bit mythic. It's a little too far from us, right? And being there was a little bit scary at some point. And then I started learning about the plant. I was in the clone room, in the mother rooms, in the flower rooms. At some point, the IPM lead left and they offered me the position. I got home and I was like, what is IPM? And I typed on Google and then I started like getting books. And
when you already had a background in biology, plant science.
Yes. I had my master's, my doctor's, and my postdoc in plant sciences.
Yeah.
And then I started to use that knowledge, that training I had to learn about cannabis. Right?
It's a great foundation.
Yeah.
It's a great foundation. So many of us, because cannabis was illegal, have gone the other way, where now we're having to play catch up. And there's a lot of bro science in cannabis that if we look at biology and college level studies, a lot of people are using incorrect language, using the word like strain.
Yes.
Many things like that. I mean, there's a lot of stuff in my book. Learning how to pronounce some of the words that are in there was difficult in the beginning.
Yes.
It's even still, it's like there's a lot of stuff. But I think that building the foundation the other way, but having a passion for cannabis is the best way to go.
Yeah, so that's exactly what I have been discussing. I want to bring to my talk exactly this conflict in between legacy and science.
Right.
We were talking yesterday, smoking, having fun in San Francisco, that I used to go to the Amazon forest, for example, to find a plant I was studying at the time.
Yeah.
Even though I knew all the fancy names, like Alophilus this or Mataiba this, there were the genus that I was studying, I was to tell to the guy guiding us through the forest, hey, I need to find this. And I would tell him like a popular name, a common name for the plant. He'll find it in 2 minutes.
Yeah.
And I was like spending like 30 minutes, 45 minutes.
Wow.
So it's exactly the same with cannabis. Like who brought us here is the legacy.
Right.
That knowledge will be forever valuable.
Well,
but at the same time, I just think that we need to find a common ground, common terminology ground for us to communicate better now that it's expanding.
I agree. Well, we just need to communicate and talk a lot about it so that we can figure it all out, right? Because there's so much stuff. It's like cannabis indica, cannabis sativa, and cannabis ruderalis, right? Those are subspecies or those are not subspecies. There's a big debate right now. That some people believe that they're subspecies and some people do not believe that they're subspecies. But I think these are all things that we need to talk about, and we need to talk about them a lot. And there's so much stuff out there, just like the word strain has been widely accepted, even though it's not appropriate necessarily for cannabis. But and then variety, how variety is applied to terms in agriculture is very different from how a lot of people are applying it in cannabis.
Yeah. One big opportunity that cannabis also has is to involve itself in the scientific world through cultivars publication.
Sure.
That's still not done for cannabis. For example, orchid collectors or bromeliads collectors, when they develop a cultivar that is prized and well-known, they publish their name under a certain rules under the code. And they have
trademark.
Exactly. So cannabis has that opportunity right?
We also have the opportunity for blockchain to be applied properly, right? And so we can take blockchain, and the thing is we can't go back and say OG Kush or some of the Blue Dream. We can, right? But then we have to have several people that agree on it. If we go to the breeder and it's on the breeder, like it is in other things, like orchids, like tomatoes, like everything else, literally everything else, and these people file patents for their genetics.
Exactly.
They have patents that protect it. They trademark the names. These things are done in all forms of agriculture, and we have blockchain technology. It needs to be done in cannabis. The problem is most of the stuff, if we're looking at a genetic and we're like, oh, this or that cat piss. Well, cat piss could mean 50 different cultivars that smell like ammonia, and it's like, it's a description of an aroma. And so that can be very complicated.
But that's when science can help.
Right.
We can develop, for example, we have a tool developed.
Moving forward, it can help.
Exactly. Because before we couldn't talk about this.
Well, right. And the funny thing is something like Acapulco Gold could mean so many different things to different people. It could be Acapulco Gold hybrids, right? If we talk about Durban, the Durbans we're seeing now that we see on the, there's clones being sold of Durban poison. That is not Durban poison. Mm-hmm. The Durban poison that you would get back in the day is not something people would want clones of today. Right. Yeah. So they have stuff being called one thing, but it's another. So the name, it's a good marketing tool, and it doesn't always represent, what it really is.
Exactly. So you can add value to a cultivar, for example, when you apply tools to categorize it and to recognize it. So, for example, today with genetics development, how fast you can sequence DNA regions, or how fast you can, even the barcode. With
SNPs, like literally SNPs and barcodes. Exactly. It's like, you know, and these are the things that we're going to be talking about at the event, right? So literally the boot camp is going to be based on several things, just like we're talking about right now. We're going to have lectures and panels, right? And I feel like that's the beauty of it. Like we can really flesh out a lot of information with people that know what they're talking about, and having local Brazilians and people from all over the world that are imparting their knowledge. I feel like it's going to be a really great event.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that knowledge was what connected me and Rubens.
Yeah.
We had me and other couple guys had a podcast in Brazil, and I was trying to change exactly what you're saying, like the bro science into science. Yeah. I'm not that knowledgeable. I grow in the legacy market. I started growing like in the UK 10 years ago. And since I met with Rubens and we had this podcast, he shows so much knowledge, and was a milestone for us because he started to teach us and let us know, like, you shouldn't be doing this. You shouldn't be talking about this way. So he was guiding us into the correct way to communicate and teach. And that's what I think Rubens and we are doing here. We are changing everything to the right. We are showing people how to communicate, what's the right word to say, how to talk about cannabis. You know, he was talking about like genetics might not be the best word to be using when you are talking about cultivars, and how to talk that flower, the cannabis is not a real flower, it's an inflorescence.
Yes.
Yeah. And so he was introducing this kind of terminology like 2 years ago, and suddenly I was seeing everybody change the way they were talking. Every content creator associations in Brazil, they were all changing their way to communicate. Yeah. And I think Rubens have introduced that, because we don't have much agronomists or growers,
or botanists,
scientists in general that are focused on cannabis in Brazil, especially because it just has been decriminalized for a short time ago, you know. Yeah. So
we can see this revolution happening now. For example, there are a few universities already putting together study groups. Like one of the Brazilian biggest agronomical institutions called Embrapa has a big study group right now about it. But that's the important thing about this theme I want to bring to BCB. That it's basically, when I got here too, even though I was trained in science and I know the tools to use, I had to use the knowledge as like a gift from the growers that were teaching me. Yeah. Right? Even though I knew that the plants could be responding that way because of that. Sure. These guys were coming in inside the rooms with me and saying like, see that plant in the back there? Yeah. She's not feeling well. And I didn't have that eye. Yeah. So that's the important thing. We need to find a common ground in between the legacy and the science. Right. Put them together and move forward like full strength, full throttle.
And the thing is like you can have book knowledge and that'll only take you so far. Yep. And then you can have real world application and that can take you to a certain level. And then it's the combination of the two, the experience plus the knowledge. Yeah. Right. That is going to take us into the future. Yes. Right. And so getting together on that level, I think it's such a beautiful thing. Really. And it's like, with all these cultivars and the potential for the plant, you know, and it's like, if we look at something like wild mustard, right? Over 2,000 years ago, wild mustard was just wild mustard, but through cultivation and through, you know, commercialization on some level, it was basically bred into broccoli, kale, Brussels sprouts, you know, all these different things, Brussels sprouts and cabbage. If you look at a cabbage, it looks like a giant Brussels sprout. Right? Because it's the same, but it was selected through selective breeding. These things were bred for specific reasons and for flavor and for different things like leaf or flower, you know, and it's a beautiful thing that we're able to kind of be at the level we're at with cannabis and kind of on the forefront of moving this plant into the future, because we're going to be selecting stuff for the next, you know, the rest of our lives if we're in this for specific uses, for specific reasons, specific profiles. Everything is following trends right now, and it's like the latest and greatest. We have this American style with all this that it's, you know, instant gratification. We need this now, and 3 months later we want this, and 4 months later, 5 months later we need another new cultivar, right? Yep. And that's not how it's really going to work in the end. People are going to settle on brands. They're going to settle on one lemon flavor or a handful of lemon flavors. We don't need 50 lemons, right? We don't need 50 grapes. We don't need 50 maybe we need 50 candies, right? and for me, I like gas, so I want a bunch of variety with gas, but there'll be a lot of trust with brands. I love gas, right? I love the thiols. I love those the volatile sulfur compounds. That burn your nose, whether it's in a sativa or whether it's in something, that's more of like a short flowering indica. We talk about that morphology, but and it's also getting through this indica sativa and figuring out how we're going to describe it, right? So we describe the aroma of it? Because indica sativa hybrid just doesn't cut it anymore.
No. Yeah. And it's funny. I also prefer all the cultivars, as I say, that are hostile to my nostrils.
Yeah.
Those are my favorite ones for sure. And like, no spoilers, but a little bit what I want to bring to BCB, it's exactly that. For example, with science now, you can create an evolutionary path for cannabis species, right? So indica, sativa, ruderalis, they're specific epithets for the scientific names of those organisms.
Sure.
That's what it is. For example, sativa means what man grows.
Yeah.
So for example, the lettuce scientific name is Lactuca sativa.
Mm-hmm.
So indica means that comes from India, from the Indic Ocean.
Or derived from India, right?
Exactly. So ruderalis is done, it's like basic invasive species. That's they mean, right? So tracing the evolutionary history of these lineages, we can figure out if there is a proper separation in between these taxa, these categories, right?
And with the hybridization that's going on, right? So the thing is like the reason the indica sativa hybrid doesn't work anymore is because everything's hybridized,
hybrid.
right? So you can have a narrow leaf drug variety that tastes gassy, and you can have a wide leaf that tastes hazy.
Yes.
Right? And everything in between.
Yes.
And then with ruderalis, now we can talk in ruderalis. The autoflower trait is just a trait. It's from ruderalis, right? But that's a one selected trait that you can breed into an indica, a sativa, whatever you want as far as morphology. You can breed that across the board, right? And so the beauty of these things is like, okay, so we need to make everybody understand how we understand this and understand this plant. We need to share the knowledge so that other people see it the same way we do, and so that we can move on to the next step. Because once we figure all this stuff out, it's like, okay, but they're still arguing about a lot of stuff.
Yes.
Right. And so more communication, I think the more we talk about stuff, and then when emerging markets are educated, right, it changes the game completely, right? Because now education is power.
Yes.
So you can go and you can scale and you can grow. If you're already successful with your social clubs in Brazil. Medical association. So if you're already successful with there, and then you have somebody that knows what they're doing, you can scale a lot faster.
Yes.
You'll make a lot less mistakes along the way. I feel like, the potential is huge. And then the population is so big in Brazil, right? And I feel like that's the big game changer is the population, right? There's a lot of game changers, but the population is the big one with Brazil. And having the government on board with it.
A big part of the population that is supporting that change.
Yeah.
That's very, very important too.
Right.
It's happening. You can see. We're coming out from the shadows to the light. And it's been amazing to see that. By the way, I think today is the deadline for MAPA, that is our agriculture ministry, to release the regulations for legalizing hemp in Brazil.
Amazing.
So it's today. So it's a very nice coincidence
we should
that we're
be
here talking about
yes.
that. Exactly.
Yeah, we should be celebrating tonight, because, I work in hemp, right? That's pretty much what I do is hemp. We talk about THCA, but also I work in type 1, type 2, type 3, and type 4 cultivars. I'm working with all of them because I feel there's so much medicinal benefit to type 3s, type 2s, type 4s, not just type 1 cultivars.
Yeah.
So I'm talking about chemotypes specifically, and there's 5 chemotypes, the last one being little to no cannabinoids.
Yep.
So, but we're going to dive we're taking a deep dive. It's going to be 3 days, 6 hours a day of lectures, right? Along with amazing speakers, both Brazilian and international. We have some of the top people in the industry. Should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I believe so. When I started with Ruben's a couple of years ago, that was the idea. I keep my mouth a little bit shut here and keep watching you guys and learn so much. And for me, like my mind goes ecstasy, because I see you guys and Ruben's every time he teach me so much.
Yeah.
And when I go to people that knows less than me and I see like, guys, you need to meet this guy because he has so much to teach. and he has such a big heart, and he wants to help everyone.
Right.
You know, and I think that's what Brazil needs. You know, Brazil needs a lot of knowledge from James Loud, from Nika T, from Ray Bama, from Rubens, from Josh and Kelly, from everyone that's coming. And I hope next year we are doing the second edition in Brazil, and you're bringing something more valuable. And every year people are gonna pay to be there and say like, hey, I want to be there, because every year there's more knowledge to be thrown on the table, and I will learn more and more and evolve. So when I started all these ideas of creating content and sharing what I knew, was like so much pleasure for me when someone sent me a message and say like, hey, thank you very much. You helped me so much. My harvest this time is so much better just because you give me some little tips, you know, and I changed so much my game. And I think that's my idea from start to finish, being like 5 years creating content now and selling. I started selling seeds like 5 years ago from the UK, and creating content to like help my business like rise and coming like from the legacy market and everything I learned. I just want to share and make everybody like have a good harvest and not have the necessity to like go in like to the poverty areas and buy brickweed. You know, that was something that I had in my mind. Like, I don't want someone taking the risk like I did when I was like 20 years ago, 15 years ago, having to go to the poverty areas, to the favelas, and having to take the risk to buy brickweed for such a low quality. You could see like where you guy was taking that brickweed from. You were like,
we were talking about it today. We were walking to have breakfast, and we were like, oh my God, like all the smoke shops and all the apparel, all the gadgets you can buy today. And we were like, oh my God, we used to go to a restaurant to, like in Brazil, it was a very common thing to steal these napkins.
Yeah.
They were very thin from restaurants for us to roll our joints. Everything hidden, everything obscure.
So you would roll the joints in napkins?
In napkins, yeah, because it was like, there was nothing in there. There was no like paper brands. Yeah. There was nothing. So we had to use like napkins and everything hidden, everything weird, right? Wow. And this thing Artur is saying is exactly what happened to me. I am terrible with social media. Yeah. My stuff, it's not good. I'm sure about that, and I'm okay. But with his ideas and like this will to send back to Brazil what I have been learning here in North America with cannabis, it drove us like forward. We have like probably 8 episodes on our podcast. Yeah. And everything I post anything as a story on my Instagram that is not big at all, there's somebody saying like, hey, are you guys coming back with Dope Science? Oh, sorry, I said the name. But it was like Dope Science was the name of our little podcast, right? Nice. And it was me and him sitting down with a little presentation talking about cannabis science. Yeah. And then it was a very, very nice experience. But I don't think we have that time anymore. And we want to bring back in like like this, talking to you now, and like this is wow, like wow, you know, it's great. Amazing.
It's great for me too.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think, you know, these things, it's amazing where we are, because we couldn't do this and talk about this publicly 10 years ago, right? Yeah. Not without being heavily investigated that we're bad people. Yeah. Right? And now we're not I mean, even the US government, as strict as they are and everything else, they're not looking at us like we're bad people, right? And I think that those things have changed. Those times have passed, you know, and it's being accepted on a worldwide level like it never has before, right? Yes. And so moving into the future, it's only going to get better, right? On many levels, especially, you know, I don't know about other countries like in Asia, but I would hope, like, look at Thailand. Now we have Thailand is legal. Australia's medical going to be legal eventually, right? Yes. South Africa, all these countries that are allowing for international export. People see the value as a whole, as the world as a whole. People are seeing the value on a much bigger scale than they were 10 years ago. Yes. And that's only going to grow. You know, we look at countries like Brazil going online. This is just mind blowing.
Yeah, and if you know like how Brazil is being regulated, even though it's kind of like weird from my perspective, because I have seen regulation happening in US, and Canada, in UK, in Europe, I see Brazil is in a good spot because we can go to the court and through a lawyer request an habeas corpus to have the right to grow our own weed. Yeah. So it's kind of like, it's easier than most countries, you know, to grow your own weed. so you don't really need to worry about it. It's, of course, it's costly.
Sure.
It will cost between like $1,000 and $3,000, to get a license,
Yeah.
and it can take from 3 days to 3 years. But it's
Yep.
for everyone is different,
Yeah.
But you still being able, I know many states in the US you're not able to grow your own, your own thing, and
It's
do your
crazy.
own.
That's so crazy though, because I feel like you should be able to buy seeds, buy
Mhm.
genetics, and to be able to grow your own. That
Yep.
should just be a given, right? Like I feel like it's crazy that we would have policy, people going against, as far as corporations trying to develop policy to where people can't have home grows. That bothers me too.
Yep.
And I feel like it's a plant. It should be legal across the board. We should be able to grow it in every state, and everyone should be able to have 6 plants. I think that everyone should be able to have 100 plants if they want, personally. But that's just my opinion. I think.
Mine too.
And do you want to hear something that's funny? Last month we went to one of the biggest association in Brazil with growth bags. They land in Brazil, and we went to the association twice. And one of the founders of the association, he was arrested a couple of years ago, back like 2002, I think.
Wow.
And he was arrested, I think, for 5 years, if I'm not wrong. The name of the association is Maria Flor. And it was funny because he have like the right to leave jail to go work. And he was working the association. The association was like 1.5 kilometers from jail. So he was working every day with cannabis.
Mm-hmm.
He leave like 10 in the morning, go to the association, work with cannabis the whole day. Like he need to go back like 6 p.m. So that's how weird it can be in Brazil. The person is in jail because of growing cannabis, but at the same time, he is allowed to leave to work, and he is working growing cannabis. But he need to go back every day. And nowadays, he was so surprised how things have changed and how this happening. And I think it's just like so much opportunity. It's hard. It's a hard opportunity, of course, but we are changing history. I think we are making history in Brazil, and this is something to be reminded, I think, for the people. So if you really love what you're doing and you really believe that what you're doing is right, you should just keep going forward.
Well, one thing that, going back to the Brazilian poverty situation, one of our goals with this too is it's to make it available for all the people down there. Not just the knowledge, but the access to the medicine, to the product, to the information. Because in Brazil, what is like, it's going back to debate you guys were having minutes ago. It's Brazil has a very social, it's big social, the problem. Like the social categories, right? Where it's easier for a higher social level in Brazil to have everything. Meanwhile, the lower categories, the lowest social categories, it's more difficult to have. They have more difficulty to have access to information, to products, to
everything.
To everything.
So whether it's medicine or food or everything. Yeah.
So that's the biggest difference in Brazil. It's social. Right. So if we want to bring cannabis to Brazil, we should heavily try to bring cannabis to Brazil as everything, something for everybody, not just for the higher social classes. So this is another thing that we have been like trying with, if it's sharing knowledge, if it's sharing information, if it's sharing quality products with lower costs, all these little things, they will sum up and help everybody in Brazil that want to move forward within this path to grow cannabis. We also have like 100% free healthcare in Brazil.
Wow.
It's called SUS, S-U-S.
Nice.
Literally translating it's it's like unique system, health system for everybody, right? So this is also very nice to say, and there are lots of sections of this program. They're now talking about making cannabis part of the social service that is taking care of the people's health with cannabis.
I think it's great.
So São Paulo State, for example, where we're holding BCB, has a big plan and a big ambition of bringing medical cannabis to SUS very, very soon.
Nice.
So this is also amazing, seeing coming like from the government into the the healthcare system, right? So this is amazing too. And we love to see that there are lots of places in the country already talking about bringing cannabis to this system.
And there's a lot of associations also partner with the government to provide these cannabis products to people that really need. And one good fact about associations is, as they are non-profit, they must to invest 100% of their profits back into their business, into the association. So nowadays you can see, just talking about numbers with some of the associations I know, they are make like around $1 million a month. And that's like gross, of course, but this still is a lot of money, and they must to invest 100% of that money back into the association. So can you imagine? We went to Maria Flor twice in July and August, and even though it's just such a small time between both visits.
Sir, this is very tasty. Sorry to interrupt. It's very
between
good.
both visits, you could see how much it changed from one month to another. Their lab changed so much. And they keep investing. It's a 60 people association in Brazil. It's 60 people, like it's not a small amount of people, So imagine how many hands you need to organize and lead, all this work, harvesting twice. And even though my knowledge is not that big as you and Ruben's, I could see so much more potential to improve their growing, their strategy, to harvest more times during the year. Brazil has this great system that you can grow, and you always in flowering during the whole year. The whole year in flowering,
adapting.
You don't have the solstice, right? Like you have here in the north of. So
you guys are closer to the equator.
Yeah.
So you can get more harvest in depending on what you're growing.
Yes.
I think there's potential for different genetics. That would work better in Brazil than they work in the United States. Vice versa, we have some stuff that works better here. So that's the beauty of the plant, is it adapts. But we have so many different varieties available as far as these cultivars. We have short flowering, long flowering, everything in between, including autoflower. And
we need to be very careful the humidity in certain places for sure.
Yeah.
But Brazil is in between the equator line and the tropical line down there, right? So mainly every part, like most of the country, is in between
equatorial and tropical.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's why we can basically grow throughout the whole year. Of course, adapting to some environmental conditions that happen here and there, depending on the region you are. So, for example, where Lars lives now in Rio de Janeiro, or São Paulo, it's very close to the ocean. So the humidity is very high because there's like a big line of tropical forest down there.
Sure.
So in the mid of the country where the Brazilian savannas are, it's drier.
Yeah.
So you need to. So as a continental country, there will be specifications for each place, but you can flower the whole day.
There's nothing wrong with humidity. You shouldn't be afraid of it. You just need to grow the right cultivars that aren't susceptible to fungal pathogens, right?
Yes.
So like if we're talking about botrytis or powdery mildew, things like that, it's like, but then it has to do with bracts, right? So we can have nested bracts where it's all tucked in. We can have open bracts and everything in between, and then stress testing. As long as you're stress testing, and we're going to talk about that a lot when we talk about the breeding and how you properly stress test. And I believe that having coastal areas, it's a great way to be able to stress test for botrytis resistance and powdery mildew resistance.
Yes. And I think that knowledge is very important for some of the people that will be present at BCB, because as we are curating the seats, because we understand that not everybody will be able to have the opportunity to see it live, like face to face. A lot of people will be through streaming, of course. Sure. But there's so many guys in Brazil that are trying to be a breeder one day, and I think that knowledge is essential to them.
There's a secret.
Yeah,
there's a secret.
That must be a lot of secrets.
No. There's one main secret. There's one, and it's not even a secret. There's one, and my train of thought with that is, if you want to be a good breeder, learn how to be a good grower first, because you have to make the plant express to a certain level to be able to do phenohunting, which is variety testing or phenotypic study, right? Like, so if we're going there and you want to be good at that, you have to have the foundation of being a good cultivator to be able to make the plant express. That is the single most important thing with being a good breeder, is being able to grow really well, in my opinion.
Sorry if I'm inverting a little bit here the roles, but as a student, I want to ask the teacher something too.
Sure.
how many cycles would you consider necessary for you to really observe and see the fully expression of that cultivar?
It's different with every cultivar.
Yes.
Right. So
yes.
some cultivars, they never grow the same. You can go in the same exact environment back to back, and each time you finish, they're going to be a little bit different. We look at the Crippy and some things like that my buddies are growing right now. That's an old school genetic, but it comes out slightly different in terp expression.
Yeah.
And not only terp expression, but even structure. Sometimes it's more open, and sometimes we get more of a flat top on the colas or flatter. And other times it's open and they're more pine cone like, right? And so from batch to batch, but really each cultivar, it takes several times to grow it. It takes like 3 times to get it down to where you can. I would say 3 is a good number, but it's so specific. And if you want to learn how to grow, how many cycles does it take for you to become a good grower? It just depends on you.
Yeah.
It's so much about the individual. Some people have green thumbs, like my brother. He had a green thumb, and I would say I had one of those thumbs where I was excited and I loved the plant so much I learned how to be a good grower, right? Over time.
Yeah.
Right.
But I love the number 3 because I really think that 3 should be the minimum for you to really understand.
Right.
Utopic will be like 5 or 7, but I know we have no much time sometimes to keep it going, right?
3 you can do a lot of good observation in 3 cycles, right?
Lots.
So in reality, 3 cycles is a great way to observe, and then the more the better.
Yeah.
So, and the beauty of it is so over the period of your life, you collect data points with everything you do. Growing is the same. So the more times you grow, the more times you smoke, the more times you make extract, right? You're collecting data points every time you do it to learn how to do it better. And if you're good, what you do is you apply the mistakes so you don't make the same mistakes over and over and over again. That's how good growers get better, is by making mistakes, right? If you jump into a system that's perfect and you're not making a lot of mistakes in the beginning, you're not going to learn nearly as much as the guy who's fucking up the first 10 crops that he does.
Yeah.
A little bit here, a little bit there, but getting better every time. So it's one of those beautiful things too. I think cultivation, it's a lifetime.
Yeah.
If you look at martial arts, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, right? I love Brazilian jiu-jitsu. That's what I'm doing when I go down there, is I'm going to figure out where to train.
Okay.
Okay.
So,
Connect with some nice guys.
So for sure. And then the guys that I train with also have friends down there. But it's a lifetime and it's a lifestyle, right? So it's all about the lifestyle, and whether it's martial arts, whether it's growing cannabis or being part of the industry, however you're part of it, you never really master it. You only improve constantly. And the thing is, I feel like the Japanese mentality is to wake up and try to do better than the day before.
Yeah.
As long as you have that mindset with growing, you're going to get better. You're going to get good, right? And there's so many different lanes you can go in. The beautiful thing with cannabis is like, we can go in any different lane. Do we want to do gas? Do we want to do candy? Do we want to be extractors? Do you want to grow or breed to your specific style? And how you develop that style is a lifetime of experience.
Yeah. And there's a lot of people that also doesn't really want to be on that style. They just want to have the simple plant. Yeah. It's kind of like a passion. I have met so many people that have been out of depression through growing cannabis. Yeah. And you don't see that crazy passion like we do, like, oh, I want to learn more. But you see that contact between the person and the plant help them so much. So I think that the plant has so much to offer. You could be like a grower that, oh, I'm so passionate about it and I want to learn every day more and more and more. But at the same time, you could be there just like, that make me calm, that chill me.
Like a therapy.
Yeah. Most of us got into this working with this plant from one way or another because of the way it made us feel. Yep. And I was at a time in the 90s where the weed didn't all look good or taste good, but we would buy it anyway because it got us high and we liked the effect. I would say most of it was all about the effect in the beginning.
Yeah.
Right. And so we're going into a world that's going to be much different than that, where there's accessibility, but like we got into this because the way it makes us feel. We need to continue that narrative. That's another thing I'm going to be talking a lot about in Brazil is, how does it make you feel, right? And if we look at it from that perspective, we take away the Instagram, we take away the social media, we take away the look of the plant. And at the end of the day, how does it make you feel? How does it taste? This plant can make the world a better place.
Yeah. And I think especially for a country like Brazil and the way it's starting to regulate, for the doctors that are prescribing cannabis for their patients, they should have that one-to-one contact with the grower and the breeders and the associations, because the medical body in Brazil that regulates, they announced that doctors should prescribe based on the cultivar name.
Oh my, that's a big one to me.
Yeah,
for
that's
me.
based on the cultivar name. So let's say like
It's
OG
kinda
Kush.
dangerous,
Let's
I
use
think.
as
Well, it's such a problem,
Because exactly
right?
what you just said. Like,
yeah,
how do you know?
how do you know that
is
that's what that, right?
Yeah.
You can call anything
Yeah.
anything. So literally that's just a way to skate around the system.
Yes.
Whereas if you don't have it attached to a blockchain that started with the breeder, you could put anything
Yep.
as in anything in that blockchain model even, right? So you have
Exactly.
to start with a breeder and then you have to start with something, well, breeder and blockchain together is the perfect combo
Yes.
because now it's like, okay, I did the work, I created this, we have a stamp, right? And so as it gets passed along through life, and I feel like blockchain is obviously the future. There's so much potential for it. But right now you can call anything, and there's so much discrepancy across the board.
It's dangerous.
Everywhere. I see so much stuff being mislabeled now,
Yep.
Even cuts and clones. And
Yep.
it's like, if you didn't get it from the actual breeder, you don't necessarily know, right? And unfortunately, that's just the world we live in.
And I use a lot the Canadian regulations.
Yeah.
A faster track to get there is also make it accessible for you to test what you're
Sure.
growing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because Health Canada's one of their priorities is to ensure safety, consumer safety.
Yeah.
So on their labels, you need to on the product labels, you need to have like the percentage of THC and your
Right.
percentage of other cannabinoids. So let's say, for example, that you have an idea that your tolerance is around 25% THC. And if you go too higher than that, you're going to have a bad experience.
I hate the THC comparison because it's so much more about terpenes than THC. I know what you're saying.
Exactly.
I just hate that analogy. And I think that's one of the biggest things we can educate other countries
Yes.
on is the THC
The entourage effect.
is
for sure.
not the end all be all. It's so much more about
Exactly.
the entourage because I can have stuff that's 14% that'll kick your ass more than the 25.
Than the 25. Exactly. But then at least
Yeah.
that information can act as a warning for the consumer and say like, oh, maybe this is too strong for me. I know these terpenes.
Sure.
Because now on the label you have cannabinoids and 3 or 5 major terpenes.
Yeah.
So you can understand at least it's a first step.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
and
I think we
making
need
that easy.
We need
like easier
fingerprint.
access.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we need
exactly.
fingerprinting on
Fingerprints
everything.
will be
Like literally, I would love it if every container had fingerprinted
Yeah.
snips, right?
Oh,
So
yeah.
basically,
Oh, yeah.
MyFlora DNA, they do fingerprint testing based off 2,000 snips, right?
Yeah.
And it's not 100%. I think the potential for it is great.
Yep.
And the more snips they use, the better, the
Yep.
more accurate it will be than actual fingerprints. But the potential, if we were to go around and we know these genetics and then you're very comfortable with the genetics and you're like, man, that's good. You could look at other brands and see if they have similar profiles. If there was a star chart, it'd be great if there was a
Yeah.
star chart.
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh man, I love sour diesel. So everything in this spectrum is going to be stuff I like.
Even like Dr. Ethan Russo,
Russo,
so that
yeah.
that is like the mastermind behind the entourage effect.
Yeah.
When you see his cultivar charts that show like based on terpenes and those in cannabinoid profiles what is expected to happen, something like that is already very, very special. Something it's a very interesting tool to support the consumer. And that's great, by the way, sir. Oh my God.
Good stuff, right? You like gas? Yeah, it's good weed though.
Right. Oh
It's
yeah.
good, yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And so one of the things I'm going to be doing at the boot camp is actually teaching people how to roll how I roll. It's
Mhm.
just my way. There's so many different ways to roll and everyone has their own.
Oh
But-
my God. Today something disastrous happened. I tried to roll one
Yeah.
and it went totally bad. I'm sorry to interrupt
Yeah,
you, but
yeah.
I just
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously you need the right kind of papers for rolling, and everyone has their own style. What size do you roll? But like when you're talking about pheno hunting, I think that's the best way to test your work. We all got to test our work. That's part of the job,
Yeah.
right? So,
This is great. Yeah.
but yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun, and I feel like we're going to have a fun panel in Brazil, especially talking about genetics, talking about nomenclature, all these things. And also getting a lot of feedback from the audience. What do they want to learn? What do you guys have questions about?
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
and so. It's not just, for the event, we're allocating the majority of the space for Brazilians, but there is some space for international guests. I think we have 50 slots for international guests. We can fit up to 250 people potentially.
Yeah.
We're hoping we have about 200, right? And there's only 50 slots for international guests. So if you're international, you guys want to go, you want to see our guys, Beyond cultivationbootcamp.com. You can go to the website. You can purchase tickets 11th, 12th, and 13th in Brazil, followed by the 14th, 15th, and 16th by Cannabis Expo São Paulo.
Yeah.
It's going to be a lot of
big
fun.
week.
Yeah, it's going to be a real big week in Brazil. A lot of fun. I've never been to Brazil, so I'm excited to check it out for the first time. And I feel like there's a good team in place, right?
Yeah,
And
it's an amazing team, and I think gonna be one of a kind. Especially because we're gonna have Nika T on board with us.
Yeah.
And he gonna do something that we never have seen in Brazil before.
Yeah.
It's like
processing, 3 days of processing, hands-on processing, so people will be able to get to see it. Well, he'll be lecturing while you guys are going to be processing, and I feel like if you want to learn how to do that, it's a great way to go. If that's where you want to go, that's a great place.
We have
rosin, bubble hash. I love bubble hash more than rosin these days, but they're both great, and they both have their use, and they both have
Brazil
purpose,
has
right?
a really strong hashish culture.
Yeah.
I think if you go to Brazil, you're gonna be impressed.
Well,
Compared to any other country I have ever been, I have been.
Oh, we made the news. National
Spain.
news.
same thing with
Yeah,
like
no-
England and Spain and
I
Europe.
think-
I think they have a lot of that, which you guys probably have adopted and made your own.
I have seen a lot of guys from Spain come to Brazil and have realized that Brazilian culture in hashish now is so much bigger.
Mainstream, very
Yeah,
strong.
like there's a lot of extractors there. And I think the two big names on this panel is definitely you and Nika, because guys want to learn how to produce their own seeds. That's something that I have seen, especially working with seeds for so long. I have know a lot of guys that say like, well, James will finally like teach me the
Yeah.
like tips to have my seeds like on like no top-notch seeds, not just like doing some
Sorry to interrupt this, but I think BCB,
Yeah.
that's what it's all about. This is a big staple for us to finally connect Brazil and what's happening in Brazil
Yeah.
with these great minds from the industry, like you, like Nika, for the first time.
Yeah.
Like we had very few opportunities to meet like strong people from the area down there. And this is the first time where we're gathering these minds before the biggest event 3 days later.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a huge staple to have the media outlets and these minds gathered, that it's bringing from the outside. Brazil has been kind of walking by itself for too long.
Yeah.
And BCB will bring that power to the stroke, like the power to the path, right?
Power to the people.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. The path and the power to the
Yeah.
people. And that's what it's all about. I mean, these are exciting times, right?
Yeah.
And so I think in the United States, the industry, a lot of people are struggling, right? And not just in the industry, even outside the industry. In the United States, it's tough times right now, but everything comes in waves. And I get excited about seeing places like Brazil that are coming online. And like, if you look at it as a whole over time, this is just going to be a little setback in the economy and all these other things. And it's going to get better and it's going to get worse again. In Brazil, you guys are going to have the same thing where it will get better and it will get worse and it will get better and it will get worse throughout time, right? And so to be on the forefront is pretty special.
Yes, I think everyone that's joined BCB will have the opportunity to learn with the best names in the market now, right?
Yeah. And then it's also going to be pay-per-view. So if you can't attend, you can watch it. You can go to sign up. We have availability and we're going to be featuring it on OaksterdamUniversity.com after the fact. So you'll get pay-per-views after. We're going to be airing that all the way until Germany, and then we'll cut it for a while. We're going to do the German one and we'll have access to all our different events online, which working with High Times in Oaksterdam, this is the dream come true for me. You know, it's like, growing up, I really looked up to High Times magazine. That was the one I wanted to, I wanted everything about High Times. I wanted to grow like the guys in High Times. I wanted to be those guys. Right. And now I guess, things worked out. My 18-year-old self would be pretty stoked on the stuff we're doing. And then with High Times and then Oaksterdam was, an important piece of, important component in Oakland. Right, especially it started in Oakland, but on a grander scale, the education started at Oaksterdam. They had universities in in Amsterdam. We've had the Amsterdam College, right, for cannabis, the Amsterdam Cannabis College, and growing up, seeing all these things, and now education, and then it's going into universities, right, and so now we have universities that are studying hemp and cannabis. And Davis, they're doing a great job with that. Cornell, they're doing great with that. Big reputable universities, and it's going to be everywhere. It's going to be everywhere eventually. And to be part of it, on the small level that we are a part of it is so big for me and for what I'm doing. And I feel like transitioning in the future, these are the kind of moments I want to have in my life.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And for us as Brazilians, I think this is even like,
it's almost surreal.
Wow.
Yeah.
Because we're like, wow, Brazil, seriously?
Yeah.
Let's go. Right?
Totally. It feels like Christmas Eve when we start talking about it, you know?
No,
It's
I've
like,
been telling these boys, like, you guys are making me so happy lately.
Yeah.
I flew from Kelowna and like out of nowhere, all these things happening. I was like so excited, so happy. It's been amazing. An amazing journey right now. I can't imagine what is coming. Yeah.
Totally. And life's a journey. It's all about it's not about the destination. It's about the way daily improvement, putting, and even in tough times, putting one foot in front of the next and just keep going forward. That's all we can do sometimes. And sometimes we make leaps and sometimes we make baby steps, but it's all part of the bigger picture.
Yes.
100%. And I think this is what I like to see, like people smiling and happy with what we do,
Right.
Like having this idea to bring and create all these BCB event, this bootcamp masterclasses, so much that I have a dream about it, like to be able to provide to everyone in Brazil and help everyone else to learn.
Well, and then taking this thing on the road is going to be a lot of fun. Going to Germany and also like being part of an event where we're going to meet all these people in Germany, where we're meeting these people in Brazil, and who knows where we might go to Chile next, right? We might go to Thailand. There's so many other countries to go where I think this boot camp could be beneficial, could be amazing, right? And then the collective knowledge that we're going to pick up over time, I think is what's really special, right? It's all those, like if you go for 3 days and you pick up one thing, that's great, but you're going to get 20 different things where you're like, oh, wow, or aha, that's how you do it, right? And there's so many little things with breeding where I feel like we can go through a couple hours. I can teach you a whole bunch of things that are going to get you further ahead a lot faster, stuff that I've learned. It's like about regular breeding, about feminized breeding, autoflowers, when to use autoflowers, when not to use autoflowers, how we can breed new autoflowers based on location, breeding for your climate. I think that's a huge benefit. Selecting traits, right? Just like they do in every other form of agriculture, right? So like we just need to impart a lot of that knowledge, but cannabis is special. You can still grow it like a row crop, right? And still you get really good results growing cannabis like a row crop. If you do autoflowers, even photoperiod, smaller plants with smaller buds, I prefer that over the big, huge, tall plants, although everything has its place.
Yes. Lots of different ways to do it.
Yes. Well, and there's so many different places and so many different ways to do it, depending on your climate, your environment, greenhouse versus outdoor versus indoor, and your goals, right?
Yeah.
And, it depends on the direction you want to go with it. Are you doing it for extraction? Are you doing it for extraction and edibles, right? To sell whole extract, I really see the world as going into pre-rolls and vape cartridges heavily. Unfortunately, I'm not a huge vape cart guy. I do love rosin. I do love rosin and edibles. Rosin gummies are my favorite. That's consuming those. That's the great way to do it. But pre-rolls and getting past this point in the United States where we have to look at the flower, you just give somebody a joint. They either love it or they hate it, but it's in the joint. And we're talking about the effect of it then. We're talking about the effect. We're talking about the flavor, the experience.
Yes. The experience is everything.
Yeah.
You can grow the best weed, but if you don't grind correctly and grow correctly, the experience is going to be the worst.
Totally. It's like those little things. You use the wrong kind of paper.
Exactly.
Like tobacco.
It's all about experience.
And I think
I'm not a tobacco guy.
This experience is also being amazing.
Yeah.
So it's so cool. And
one thing I hear a lot in Brazil is I see a lot of growers having limitations. Like probably most of the time money-wise.
Sure.
So I think having the knowledge, it's give you the capability to make different decisions. When I start growing, I have like the third room and under the roof.
Yeah.
And so I knew like I have an alarm on my phone. So when I used to open and close the window, just like to improve the VPD inside the tent.
Yeah.
So I think like this is small knowledge, like just something that I learned from you on your podcast, just something I learned from him, talking with him. So everything will help you to make the right decision. And Brazilians has this kind of limitations, especially because technology has not reached its full potential in Brazil. You see a lot of extractors here, like the filters and everything is so much better here in the US, you can't deny. But if you have the knowledge, you have the chance to make different strategies to improve your harvest and your product. So I think knowledge is everything, and what we bring to the table is knowledge.
Nice.
Yeah, understanding your goals, I would say for Brazil, it's like, just to summarize, it's because for us in Brazil, we're on the baby steps phase, and the cost for growing it's not cheap, and we're learning. It's what I try to say is that you need to understand your goals, your needs, why you're growing, and make the better out of it. Because if you're growing in São Paulo to extract for a medicine, your goals are totally different than if you're growing in the northeast part in Brazil for recreational purposes.
Totally.
So you need the greatest way to start right now in Brazil, for me, is to, in my humble opinion, is to understand your goals and your needs.
Right.
And
I think you need to do that before you even start, right?
Yes.
And with everything in life.
Yes.
With everything in life, you need to understand what your goals are and develop goals before you put a seed in the ground, or before you germinate, before you put clones in. Before you even buy lights, you should, you need to develop those things first. And it's like, okay, you're a solution. You want to be a solution to a problem.
Yes.
That's how you become successful, right? Is become the bigger problem you solve, the more money you can make, right? And so if you look at it kind of like that, whether, your goals are extraction or whatever, like identifying those goals before you even buy lights, because maybe you want to buy a specific light spectrum. Maybe you want to grow a greenhouse or outdoors because it saves money.
Yep.
But then what are the risks associated with those? There's so many different what ifs,
approaches, what ifs,
based on the individual and based on the environment, right? And so there, and I love the potential of working with Landrace Genetics in Brazil. It kind of excites me, and seeing those and figuring out how we can take Landrace varieties and incorporate what we have that makes sense to getting better varieties, the more optimal varieties, right? And I think that's the future. It's not just, we don't want to settle with good anymore. We want optimal, right? Because it's going to come down to pennies. When it's like every big business, once you scale up, it's all about the pennies. How much can I save here? How much can I save there to make a profit? We're in agriculture. It's not the celebrity thing that it used to be or people thought it was, right? We're in agriculture, and it's an agricultural business. And moving forward, it's all about, pennies and understanding your business thoroughly, understanding what goals you have and what new goals you could potentially have that are going to solve big problems.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that goes, as the name says, it goes beyond cultivation, because the knowledge it needs to be spread not only for those that's growing, but also for those that are selling, because everything also starts with the seed. So if the person wants to grow for itself, the person who is selling the seed needs to understand what it's selling in order to provide what the person needs. So when a person comes to us and say like, hey, I want to buy a seed, I say like, what do you want? You want something for medical reasons, recreational reasons? A lot of people, of course, come for the THC levels. But I always say like, I think you need something like this. I try to like help them, like trying to share the knowledge and make them understand THC is just such a small part of the game.
Yeah, totally. I couldn't agree more.
Oh yeah.
So let's talk about Brazil and how many active medical associations are there?
I think last time I saw over 150, and some of them they have like over 15,000 patients.
Wow.
Some Maria Flor, the one that's working close to us, they have like over 15,000 patients and over 3,000 orders per month. So that's a lot of work. And if you see their location and their work, it's so much hard work that's put on to do all this medication for all these people, know, and they have so much room that although they do such a great work, they have so much room to improve. Even improve something on the clone phase, something on the vegetative phase, preparing the clones and for harvesting faster. They have so much potential, and they're gonna be part of BCB with us. They want to join, they want the knowledge. So and all this gonna make probably then be able to produce twice as much.
Nice.
Twice as much.
Well, so it's legal to grow now. If you're part of an association, you're allowed so many plants per patient, or how does that work?
Well, that's something kind of weird. Some associations don't have the same rights. But it's kind of like the government in some locations kind of like don't really try to see what's happening. You know, some associations had problems, even though they don't have authorizations, and some associations don't have any kind of authorization and have no problems at all. Like Maria Flor, they grow like over 400 plants on the ground, and they don't have authorization to grow. They have authorization to transport, which is weird. They have done a full request, and the judge say like, you know what? No, I'm not going to authorize everything. You have the right to transport cannabis all across the country. So they can transport, but it cannot grow or sell. But it's kind of weird. Some associations
it's everywhere.
Everywhere is different. It's you don't have a certain. It's not it's not regulated.
Yeah,
everyone can kind of like do the way they want.
Yeah, probably as I understand, it's basically based on the judge's decision that is giving the association the permission to grow or to produce an extract and so on, right? So I think that the associations started very big and strong in the northeast part of Brazil. I think Paraíba is one of like the staple states for that in Brazil.
Yeah,
because the state kind of joined the fight, right? And it was very important for them. But always depends on the authorization they will get from the justice system and what they can grow or do. I think what is a little bit different from clubs, for example, if I understand well, maybe I'm totally wrong, is that the associations in Brazil, they're responsible for growing, producing, and distribute to the patients.
Yeah.
It's not like a social club where everybody have the same rights. So basically, they will produce and distribute what is on the patient's prescription, basically.
Yeah, sure.
Right. So it's a little bit different on that vibe that is a club or a social group.
Right.
It's more like an association of patients that are there to grow and to produce a medicine and then distribute to the patients. I think that's the biggest difference between Brazilian associations and clubs all around the globe. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, it's the same way for both. A person or association to get its license is the same way. You basically need to request through an Habeas Corpus. So you basically need to be growing and doing something wrong to request a protection from the government to keep doing it.
Oh, wow.
So you need to be growing.
You break the law.
Yeah. Otherwise you go through a civil request.
Your problem is the solution.
So if you're not growing already, you go through a civil request where you say like, oh, I'm a company and I want to grow for business.
Yeah.
So that's more on a civil level. So if you want to have a medication, it's the only way now. You need to be growing illegal and send everything to the court and say like, look, here's my address, here's my name. Sometimes you even add pictures to it. So like, here's what I'm doing. You go to an agronomist and say like, how much plants should I have? So that he do a calculation
based on the prescription,
based on your prescription from your doctor.
Yeah.
You do this math and say like, okay, he can have us up to 60 plants per year.
Yeah.
So, and then you send this request to the court. The court will see and check and say, well, yes, you can. Yes, you cannot.
So do they have large-scale growing facilities, indoors and outdoors?
Yes. Now we have plenty of associations doing different styles of growing. Some go for regenerative methods, like more organic sites. Some are more guys that go with minerals. We have plenty of associations using different styles of and techniques of growing and crop steering.
Yeah. I don't know if like the indoor facilities are something in Brazil, like here, for example. I think they're just crawling. They're just starting to be developed.
Yeah.
Because who wants to invest that kind of money for something that is not as clear, as the regulations are not there yet.
Right.
The decriminalization came from like for home grow, basically where you can grow 6 plants at home.
Yeah.
So how would you invest millions of dollars or millions of reais to build a facility that you don't even know if you'll be able to grow because it depends on the judge?
Yeah, but after today,
I
want to talk about hemp, right? And I think that's a big game changer.
Exactly.
Yeah, but although I agree with him, how you don't find investors in this kind of business yet, because we are talking about our associations that is non-profitable.
Yeah.
But you can very fast capture a lot of patients that really want to have access to this medication.
Yeah.
And you can go really fast. You just need to do the maths. Think about it, 15,000 patients.
Yeah.
Having prime quality products, how much you can like, even though you're going to invest everything back, but you have to pay for your employees. So you're creating jobs,
Yeah.
You're creating a lot of work, then you're providing that really high quality product,
Sure.
And
so
that's why these associations are the engine and the stronghold for our cannabis policy in Brazil right now.
Yeah.
Because they are on the ground doing everything they can to reach the biggest part, like
Sure.
the highest amount of people possible.
Yeah.
And it's becoming like the powerhouse for the cannabis industry in Brazil. It's like these guys are getting together and working and producing and distributing and hoping that through the regulations or investment, they will be able to upgrade their methodologies, their cultivation, and so on. And that's another very big thing for about BCB, is that people that want to get into this market to see what's happening and say like, hey, maybe I want to invest here, maybe I want to help this association, and so on, right?
Yep. Nice. Well, I ask all my guests this, and you guys can ask independently, and then we're going to have Lars jump over here and give his answer. But if you had one piece of advice for your younger selves, what would that one piece be?
For me, keep believing in yourself. I think that's my mentality. I've met with so many people that have told me that I was crazy. I was dreaming about something that will never be possible and legal to work with in Brazil.
Yeah.
And I always say, like, I dream about it working with cannabis like since 2011. And being here, sitting in this table today is kind of like...
It's an experience.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
I know. My anxiety is kind of like a little bit over the roof,
Nice.
But
Nice.
it's
good.
I feel that I'm providing a little bit of change. I have been working with seeds like for 5 years now, and seeing my customer base that have been created such a loyal, because I come from legacy, and I started this because in Brazil a lot of people was like, oh, you pay for seeds but you don't receive the product because it wasn't legal, and you couldn't also have access to premium quality seeds. So I kind of like have built a foundation with such a loyal community,
Right.
and they always tend to come back. And I see a lot of people saying like, hey, thanks for the opportunity to have access to this premium quality seeds and all the knowledge you shared. So being able to like be part of BCB for me is something that kind of like a dream come true.
Yeah, it's an amazing thing, man. And what would your
For me, I think it will be patient and enjoy the ride.
Yeah.
So if you're enjoying your ride and you still keep the patience to know that you will get there, I think that's like my 18-year-old really needed that. Like, like it was everything
It
to
happens,
like, whoa, but like be patient, enjoy the ride, you will get there.
It happens when it's supposed to happen.
Yes.
Right. That's the way life works. And if you struggle's not a bad thing. It seems like it.
Yeah.
But struggle builds character more than anything.
And when I say enjoy the ride, means like there will be ups, there will be downs, there will be like fucked up curves, there will be like so many weird things, but enjoy it both as you can, learn as you can.
Yeah.
One day will come.
Lars, get over here. We got to get Lars in here. If you had one piece of advice for your younger self, what would that one piece be?
I think it would be really focus on what you believe in, and that's what you should be doing.
Nice. Excellent. Well, yeah. So if people want to know more about the Beyond Cultivation Bootcamp, the best places to go are the website, beyondcultivationbootcamp.com, and it's in English and Portuguese.
Right.
Right. So we got English, Portuguese, not in Spanish yet, but it will be in Spanish and German in the near future.
Yep.
Those are the next goals for us. Instagram, Beyond Cultivation Bootcamp at Instagram. And then you guys, individual Instagrams, you guys want to share those?
Yes. You can find me on Instagram as Biloteiro.
Yep.
And I'll just plug one of our companies. You can find the seeds at
Seed Club Official and seedclub.com.br.
BeyondCultivationBootcamp.com. Check it out. There's limited space. If you're international, especially, there's limited space of only 50 seats. And then if you're Brazilian, there should be a lot of room. But yeah, we'll just have to see. I'm super excited about the whole event. Thank you guys so much for coming on the show today. I look forward to doing this more. We're definitely filming when we get into Brazil. So we'll have a film team. We might as well make use and film some of the associations, film some interviews so we can air some stuff for the channel. I think it'd be a lot of fun.
Absolutely.
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 Thank you
James,
very
thanks
much.
so much for having us.
For sure. Thank you guys, everybody. Yeah. Thank you to our sponsors. Thank you guys very much for your support. Thank you guys for watching. Please like and subscribe down below.